Patience is not a virtue. It's a siege weapon. I learned this not from the philosophy books I used to read in Yale Law School, but by watching the condensation slowly drip down the side of my Baccarat crystal goblet as I watched my sister, Isabella, shimmer under the golden light of the Newport, Rhode Island sunset. She stood in the center of her husband's summer mansion's perfectly manicured lawn, raising a glass of Dom Perignon 2008 vintage champagne, the same year she decided, with the coldness of a surgeon removing a healthy organ, that my happiness was a personal affront to her existence. To my 5 years of perfection with the most incredible man in the world, Isabella announced, her voice tinkling like wind chimes, projected to reach the 200 guests of New England's elite without needing a microphone. She looked at Preston, her husband, a state senator with presidential ambitions and a square jaw that screamed manufactured integrity, and smiled. That smile, the smile that disarmed traffic cops, university professors, and, tragically, my own parents. And to our little miracle on the way, Philania announced, her voice tinkling like wind chimes, projected to reach the 200 guests of New England's elite without needing a microphone. She looked at Preston, her husband, a state senator with presidential ambitions and a square jaw that screamed manufactured integrity, and smiled. That smile, the smile that disarmed traffic cops, university professors, and, tragically, my own parents. And to our little miracle on the way, finally, the family is complete. She touched her 4-month belly, wrapped in draped white silk. The audience collectively gasped. Women with pearl necklaces wiped discreet tears. Men in beige linen suits nodded in approval. It was the final scene of a Disney movie, if the princess were a diagnosable sociopath and the prince were a useful idiot with an unlimited trust fund. I was on the periphery of the scene, leaning against a Greek marble column, wearing a discreet navy blue dress, the uniform of the spinster, helpful sister. My role there was clear, to be the background scenery, the shadow that made Isabella's light seem brighter. I smiled and raised my glass. The champagne tasted like bile in my mouth, but I swallowed. I had been swallowing for 5 years. 5 years of Thanksgiving dinners, listening to how Isabella and Preston were the golden couple. 5 years watching my parents, Robert and Martha, look at her with adoration, and at me with that pity reserved for wounded animals that cannot be put down. "Are you okay, Elena?" The voice came from my left. It was Thomas, Preston's best friend and chief of staff. He always had a crush on me, an attraction that Isabella made sure to neutralize years ago by telling him I was emotionally unstable after my divorce. "I'm great, Tom," I replied, turning to him with my best martyr smile. "It's exciting, isn't it, seeing Bella so happy, after everything we've been through." "You're a saint, Elena," he said, shaking his head. "Honestly, after what happened with Mark, to see you here, supporting your sister, organizing this vow renewal, it's admirable." Mark, my ex-husband's name, hung in the salty Atlantic air like an unwanted ghost. "The past is a foreign country, Tom," I quoted softly. "They do things differently there. I just want my sister to have what she deserves." And I meant it. You desperately wanted Isabella to have exactly what she deserved. The vow renewal party was the stage eu helped build brick by brick over the last 6 meses. As the rehabilitated and helpful sister, I offered to organize everything. The guest list, catering, music, security. Isabella loved it. "You're so organized, Elle," she told me, handing me passwords, contacts, full access to her digital and domestic life. "Besides, you don't have anything better to do you? No husband, no kids." She didn't know that my nothing better to do was, in fact, a full-time job of controlled demolition. As the string orchestra began playing Clair de Lune, my mind traveled back to the day my life ended. It wasn't a sudden event, it was an erosion. I had been married to Mark for 3 years. We were happy. He was an architect, I was an art curator in New York. We were trying to get pregnant. Life was promising. Isabella, at the time, was single, bouncing from boyfriend to boyfriend, accumulating debt and resentment. She hated that I was the stable sister. It started with whispers. "Mark is working late again, Elle? Strange, I saw his car near Soho." Small drops of poison. Then the physical evidence. A lipstick in the glove compartment that wasn't mine. A hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. Mark denied, cried, said he was going crazy, that he didn't know how those things appeared. I, hormonal and stressed with fertility treatments, began to doubt my sanity and his. The final blow was his company's Christmas party. Isabella went with me. At one point, she disappeared. She came back crying, saying she saw Mark kissing an intern on the terrace. She made a scene, screamed, humiliated Mark in front of the partners. When we got home, Mark was destroyed. He swore to God he didn't do anything. But then, messages appeared on my phone. Screenshots of conversations sent by an anonymous number. Spicy conversations between Mark and a woman named S. I kicked him out. The stress was so much that 2 days later, I suffered a miscarriage. I lost my baby. I lost my husband. I lost my home. And Isabella? Isabella was there. She held my hand at the hospital. She helped me pack Mark's things. She was my angel. It was only a year later, when I went to help Isabella move apartments to live with Preston, that I found the box. An old shoebox at the bottom of her closet. Inside, there were 3 disposable prepaid phones, a purchase receipt for a lipstick of the same brand I found in Mark's car, and a notebook, a diary. It wasn't a diary of feelings. It was a trophy diary. December 24. Elena's face when I showed her the fake screenshots was priceless. That idiot Mark couldn't even defend himself. Finally, the perfect one broke. Now, Daddy will have to pay attention to me. I read that sitting on the dusty floor of her apartment, feeling the world spin backward. She hadn't just lied. She had orchestrated a psychological warfare campaign. She planted the lipstick. She created the fake accounts. She sent the messages to me using the disposable phones. She destroyed my marriage, killed my unborn child, and devastated an innocent man's life, all because she wanted to be the única daughter on the pedestal. I could have screamed. I could have run to her como notebook and beaten her until she bled. I could have gone to the police, but who would believe it? They were vague notes, and Mark had already moved to London, broken, depressed. The damage was done. And Isabella was about to marry Preston, the political heir. She was winning. That day, I closed the box. I put it back in its place, and I made a decision. If I confronted her now, she would play the victim. She would say I was crazy with grief. My parents would side with her. No. To destroy a monster like Isabella, you cannot use brute force. You need to use her own hunger. I waited. I waited for her to marry. I waited for her to climb the social ladder. I waited for her to build a life so high, so complex, and so dependent on appearances that a fall would be fatal. And today, 5 years later, the tower was ready to collapse. "A toast!" Preston shouted, pulling me from my reverie. He kissed Isabella passionately. I walked to the sound table, where the audio and video technician was preparing the slideshow presentation, the sisters' tribute. "Is everything ready, Mike?" I asked, smiling. "All set, Miss Elena. The file you sent me yesterday is already loaded. It comes right after the father's speech." "Perfect," I said, sliding $100 bill into his shirt pocket. "Turn up the sound. I want even the seagulls on the beach to hear." Dinner was served. Lobster, caviar, wines that cost more than a popular car. My parents were beaming at the head table. My mother held Isabella's hand as if she were made of sacred glass. "Elena, dear," my mother called me, "come sit with us. Stop working for a bit." I went over. I sat facing Isabella. "You look beautiful, Elle," Isabella said, with that false generosity of someone who feels superior. "Seriously, that blue hides the tiredness well." "Thanks, Bella," I replied, taking a sip of water. "You too. Pregnancy suits you. Preston must be over the moon." "He is," she smiled, stroking her husband's hand. "An heir. It's all we needed for the Senate campaign next year." Ah, yes, the campaign. Preston was running for federal Senate. The perfect family image was the pillar of his platform. Family values, secure future. That was the slogan. I looked at my watch. 8:30 p.m. Time for speeches. My father stood up first. He gave an emotional speech about how Isabella had always been the light of his life. I, apparently, was the overdue electricity bill. Preston spoke next, declaring his eternal love and absolute trust in the woman who redefined the meaning of loyalty. The irony was so thick I could cut it with a fish knife. "And now," Preston announced, "my favorite sister-in-law Elena has prepared a surprise for us, a video of our journey." The lights dimmed, the giant projector descended from the tent ceiling. I stood up, I picked up the microphone. My hands weren't shaking. My heart beat at a slow, predatory rhythm. "Good evening, everyone," I began. "They say you only truly know a person when you see what they do when no one is looking. Isabella, my dear sister, I have spent the last 5 years watching you, admirando how you built this perfect life, how you got everything you wanted. And today, my gift to you is the truth. The naked, raw truth about who Isabella Blackwood Miller truly is." Isabella frowned, confused by the tone of my speech, but she still smiled, expecting childhood photos and sentimental music. I signaled to Mike. The screen lit up. They weren't baby photos. The first image was a bank document, a statement from an account in the Cayman Islands. A murmur started in the audience. "What is this?" Preston asked, squinting. The image changed to a series of emails between Bella B. and a man named Donovan. I narrated over the video, my voice calm and lethal. For those who don't know, Donovan is the main lobbyist for the energy company that is funding Preston's campaign. And these emails, well, they detail how Isabella has been siphoning off funds from her husband's campaign into a personal offshore account for the past 2 years. About $1.2 million so far. "What?" Preston stood up, knocking over his chair. "That's a lie, Preston. Stop this." "Sit down, Preston. We haven't gotten to the best part yet. The money is just the appetizer." Isabella was pale. She tried to stand up, but her voluminous dress trapped her in the chair. "Turn it off. Mike, turn this off now." But Mike, bless his soul, had received clear instructions and a generous bonus to ignore any order that wasn't mine. And honestly, human curiosity is a powerful force. No one wanted the show to stop. The screen changed. Now it was a video. Grainy, black and white. A hotel security camera. Date, 3 months ago. Location, the St. Regis in New York. We saw Isabella enter the elevator. She wasn't alone. She was kissing a man. It wasn't Preston, and it wasn't Donovan, the lobbyist. It was Preston's younger brother, the family's black sheep, Caleb, who was sitting at table 3, currently with his mouth open and a shrimp falling from his fork. The silence in the tent was absolute. The sound of the sea seemed to have stopped. In the video, the elevator doors closed, but not before we saw Caleb's hand move up my pregnant sister's thigh. "You said the baby was a miracle, Bella," I said into the microphone, looking directly at her. "And it truly is, because genetically, it would be a miracle if it were Preston's. Considering Preston had a secret vasectomy 2 years ago and didn't tell you because he was afraid of your reaction. This was my ace up my sleeve. I discovered the vasectomy by going through Preston's medical records when I was organizing the family's health insurance. He never told her. He thought her pregnancy was a miracle or a failed surgery. He was living in denial." Preston looked at Isabella. Then Eli looked at his brother, Caleb. "You?" Preston whispered, his voice amplified by the deadly silence of the room. "You and Caleb?" "No, it's a setup! Elena is crazy!" Isabella screamed, finally managing to stand up. "She's always been jealous of me. She wants to destroy my marriage because she couldn't hold on to hers." "Ah, my marriage," I said, smiling. "Glad you brought that up." I signaled to Mike again. The screen changed one last time. This time, it wasn't a video. It was audio. The quality was crystal clear. It was Isabella's voice. I recorded it 6 months ago when she got drunk at a brunch, just the 2 of us, and I innocently asked about the past. Her voice echoed through the high-fidelity Bose speakers. "Can you believe that idiot Elena still cries over Mark? God, it was so easy. I bought a burner phone at Walmart, sent some spicy messages to her phone while she slept, planted some cheap panties in his car. Boom. Divorce. She was getting too cocky with that perfect life in New York. Someone had to put her in her place. And the best part? She thanked me for helping her move. Pathetic. The recording ended. I looked at my parents. My mother had her hand on her chest, gasping. My father looked at Isabella as if he saw a monster. "You did that?" my father asked, his voice trembling. "You destroyed your sister's life for fun?" Isabella looked around. She saw the faces. The shocked campaign donors, the disgusted society friends, the devastated husband, the terrified lover. She realized there was no escape. No charm could fix this. No smile could erase the recorded confession. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She attacked. She picked up a table knife and hurled it in my direction. It narrowly missed, hitting the projection screen behind me, tearing the fabric where her face had been projected. "I hate you!" she screamed, a visceral animal sound. "You ruined everything! You were always a useless shadow! I should have done worse! I should have—" "What, Bella?" I asked, dropping the microphone. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "You already took my husband, took my child, took my dignity. But you forgot to take one thing, my memory." Preston walked up to her. He was calm, a terrifying calm. "Get out," he said. "Preston, honey, listen to me. It's the pregnancy. It's the hormones. She drugged me." "Get out of my house," he repeated, "and out of my life. My lawyers will be in touch, and I suggest you hire a criminal lawyer because siphoning off campaign funds is a federal crime, and I will turn everything over to the FBI tomorrow morning to save my own skin." "What about the baby?" she cried, trying to play her last card. "It's your son." "No," Preston said, looking at Caleb. "It's my brother's problem, if it's even his. With you, you never know." Caleb got up and ran, literally ran out of the party, got into his car and fled, a coward to the end. Isabella was left alone in the center. The spotlights were still on her, but now they weren't lights of adoration. They were lights de interrogation. She looked at me. "You on," she hissed. "I hope you're happy." I walked up to her, stopping a meter away. The smell of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, now seemed putrid. "Happiness is a choice, Bella," I whispered. "But justice? Justice is a necessity. And today, the bill was paid." I turned my back on her and walked towards the exit. I walked past the shocked guests, my crying parents, the chaos I orchestrated with the precision of a conductor. I got into my rental car. As I drove down the gravel road, I saw in the rearview mirror the blue and red lights of the police approaching the mansion. Preston hadn't waited until tomorrow. He called the police immediately about the diversion of funds. He was a politician, after all. Survival first. I turned on the radio. Some pop music was playing. I rolled down the window and let the cold night air in. I had no husband, no child. But for the first time in 5 years, I didn't have a weight on my chest. The road ahead was dark, but my headlights were strong. I was going to New York. I was going to reopen my gallery. I was going to call Mark. Not to get back together. That was broken forever. But to tell him, it wasn't your fault, and it wasn't mine. Revenge is a dish best served cold? No. Revenge is surgery. It hurts, it bleeds, it leaves scars. But it removes the tumor. And now, finally, I was healed. The blue and red lights I saw in the rearview mirror were not just a visual spectacle on Newport's dark road. They were the headlights of a new chapter, one where the diplomatic immunity of Isabella's beauty and money finally expired. I drove to a cheap motel on the state border, far enough that no one would recognize me, but close enough to watch the local news on the room's tube television. And there it was, the shaky, grainy aerial image from a news helicopter, showing the lit-up mansion where police were escorting a woman in a white gala dress, now soiled with grass and mud, into a police car. Isabella did not leave with dignity. Even without audio, I could see her body language, struggling, shouting, pointing fingers. Preston was on the veranda, talking to federal agents, hands in his pockets, looking cooperative, in the posture of a man who had already cut off the gangrenous limb to save the body. The headline at the bottom of the screen screamed in urgent yellow letters, "Newport Scandal. Senate Candidate's Wife Detained on Suspicion of Federal Fraud and Embezzlement." I turned off the TV. The silence in the motel room was heavy, smelling of old carpet and lemon disinfectant, but to me, it smelled of peace. I slept for the first time in 5 years without the aid of medication. The next morning, my phone, which I had kept off, exploded as soon as I reactivated it. Hundreds of messages. Reporters, ex-friends, distant relatives who suddenly remembered I existed, and of course, my parents. There were 20 voice messages from my mother, Martha. I listened to only the first and the last. The first was pure panic. "Elena, what have you done? Isabella is hysterical at the police station. They say there's no bail until the arraignment on Monday. You need to come back and say it was a misunderstanding. You're destroying your father's reputation." The last, left at 3 in the morning, was distilled venom. "You are dead to us. You are an envious traitor. I hope you rot alone with your bitterness." I deleted them all. I didn't block the number. I wanted them to hear the call signal completing, knowing I was on the other end, choosing not to answer. Indifference is a much crueler punishment than the silence of a block. I returned to New York. The city was noisy, dirty, and indifferent, exactly what I needed. But there was a loose end, an open wound that Isabella's arrest wouldn't close on its own. Mark. Locating him wasn't difficult. He wasn't in London as I had thought. He had returned to the United States 6 months ago, living in Chicago, working for a much smaller architecture firm than the one he used to lead. I sent a short email attaching the audio file of Isabella's confession. The subject was just, "The truth. I'm sorry." He replied in 10 minutes, "I'm catching the first flight to NY." The meeting happened 2 days later, on a park bench in Washington Square Park. I arrived early, watching NYU students pass by, laughing, living dramas that seemed so small compared to my family's Greek tragedy. When I saw Mark walking towards me, my heart skipped a beat. He looked older. There was graying at his temples that wasn't there before. His shoulders, once always held with confidence, were slightly slumped, as if he carried an invisible weight. He stopped in front of me. We didn't hug. There was too much history, too much pain in the space between us. I heard, he said simply. His voice was hoarse. I listened to the recording 50 times on the plane. I didn't know, Mark, I began, feeling warm tears well up. I swear, I believed her. The evidence seemed so real. I know, he said beside me, keeping a safe distance. That's what kills me, Elena. She was good, diabolical, but good. I myself. There were moments in those dark months after you kicked me out when I questioned myself. Did I do something and not remember? Did I drink too much? She made me doubt my own sanity. She admitted everything, I said, looking at my hands. The burner phone, the panties in the car, everything. Mark sighed, a long, trembling sound. He looked at the park's triumphal arch. I lost my career, Elena. I lost my wife. I lost my child. The mention of the miscarriage made the air thin between us. I spent 5 years in a tiny studio thinking I was a monster, that I deserved misery because I had betrayed the woman I loved. And now I find out I was just collateral damage in your sister's ego war. I'm sorry, I whispered. It was the only thing I could say. I know you are, he finally looked at me. There was sadness in his eyes, but no anger towards me. What's going to happen to her? Preston turned her over to the feds to save his own skin. Campaign fund diversion, bank fraud, tax evasion. And with a public confession about the baby's paternity, well, let's just say the jury won't be sympathetic. Mark nodded. Justice. It's cold, isn't it? It doesn't bring back the 5 years. It doesn't bring back what we lost. No, I agreed. But it stops her from taking anything else from anyone. We sat there for another hour, talking not as ex-lovers, but as 2 survivors of a natural disaster. There was no kiss of reconciliation. There were no promises to try again. We were different people now, shaped by different scars. When he stood to leave, he touched my shoulder. Thank you for giving me back my innocence, Elena, he said. I can sleep now, knowing I didn't fail you. I watched him walk away, blending into the New York crowd. I cried right there, on the park bench, but it was a clean cry. The guilt I carried, the doubt that maybe I had been too harsh with him, evaporated. The following months were a media circus. The trial of United States versus Isabella Miller was broadcast on cable news channels. Preston testified against her with reptilian coldness, painting himself as the betrayed and financially abused husband. Caleb, the brother and lover, made an immunity deal and confirmed the affair, destroying any chance for Isabella to play the innocent woman card. My parents spent the rest of their fortune trying to defend her. They hired expensive lawyers, sold their summer house, liquidated stocks. They appeared in court every day. Looking at me and the gallery, I attended every session with pure hatred. To them, Isabella wasn't the criminal. She was the victim of my envy. The cognitive dissonance was fascinating and terrifying. The verdict came on a rainy November afternoon. Guilty on all 12 counts. Sentence: 8 years in a minimum security federal penitentiary. And the baby? The miracle was born while Isabella awaited sentencing, in custody. A boy. The DNA test confirmed it was Caleb's. Preston, obviously, wanted nothing to do with the child. My parents, financially and morally broken, tried to get custody, but the family court judge, aware of the toxic environment they created, denied it. The child went to a foster home in Connecticut, far from the Blackwood venom. I pray every night that he gets a chance. A year after the sentencing, I received a letter. Cheap, lined paper, institutional envelope. The stamp read Federal Correctional Institution, Danbury. It was a visitation request. I hesitated. For days, the letter lay on my coffee table, unopened. Why go? To see the caged monster? To give her the satisfaction of my attention? But curiosity won. I needed to see the end of the story with my own eyes. I drove to Danbury on a clear Tuesday morning. The prison entry process was dehumanizing. Searches, metal detectors, heavy doors clanging shut. The smell was of cheap floor wax and hopelessness. When I entered the visiting room, I barely recognized her. The Isabella I knew, the one with shiny hair, porcelain skin treated with $1,000 creams, and the posture of a queen, had disappeared. The woman sitting on the other side of the acrylic glass wore a shapeless, cocky jumpsuit. Her hair was dull, pulled back in a loose ponytail, revealing dark roots she always hid. Without makeup, her face looked gray, the lines of bitterness around her mouth deeply etched. I sat down and picked up the phone. She did the same. "You came," she said. Her voice was harsh. "You called," I replied. She looked at me, and for a second, I expected to see regret. I expected to see the little sister I played dolls with, but what I saw in her eyes was the same as always. "I need money, Elena." She went straight to the point. "The commissary account is empty. Mom and Dad no longer have liquidity. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment in New Jersey. It's pathetic." I almost laughed. "Is that all? No hello? No sorry for destroying your marriage?" "Why?" She rolled her eyes, a gesture that seemed grotesque in that environment. "You already got your revenge. You won. Congratulations. Now be practical. I need things in here. Decent moisturizer, coffee that doesn't taste like dirt. You're rich now, with the gallery reopened. Send $500 a month. It's the least you can do." "The least?" I asked, incredulous. "Isabella, you're in prison because you stole millions, because you committed fraud, and you think I owe you an allowance?" "You owe me the life you took from me," she hissed, banging her hand on the counter, which made a guard step forward. "I was going to be a senator. I was going to be somebody. You were jealous because I was better than you, prettier, smarter. Mark preferred to look at me than to you, even if he never admitted it. I did him a favor by getting you out of the way." I looked at her, truly looked, and I realized something liberating. She would never change. Prison wasn't rehabilitation for her. It was just a temporary inconvenience, an unfair scenario where she was the martyred protagonist. She felt no guilt. She had no soul. "You know what, Bella?" I said, using her childhood nickname for the last time. "I came here thinking maybe I'd find my sister. I thought suffering might have broken the shell of narcissism, but I see the tumor is the host." "Stop talking pretty and tell me if you're going to deposit the money," she retorted. "No," I said, standing up. "Not a single cent. Never. My parents may have sold their souls to support you, but I reclaimed mine." "If you walk out that door, don't ever come back," she screamed, her voice distorted by the cheap phone. "You'll die alone, Elena. Nobody truly loves you. They only pity you." I hung up the phone. The sound cut off her screams. On the other side of the glass, I saw Isabella continue screaming, gesturing, her face contorted with hatred, but I heard nothing. It was like watching a silent horror movie. A movie I had seen many times and from which, finally, I was leaving the theater. I turned my back, I walked towards the exit. When I left the prison, the fresh air filled my lungs. The sky was blue, an impossible blue. I drove back to the city. On the way, I stopped at a convenience store and bought a bottle of water and a cheap notebook. I sat on the car's hood and opened the notebook. I wrote a single sentence on the first page. Today, the story ends. I ripped out the page, crumpled it, and threw it in a trash can. My phone rang. It was an email notification. A new artist wanted to exhibit in my gallery. Life went on. The world spun, indifferent to the dramas of the Blackwoods and the Millers. I had no husband, no children, no parents who truly loved me. But I had myself, and for the first time in 32 years, I liked the company. Revenge wasn't destroying Isabella. Isabella destroyed herself. I merely shined a light so everyone could see. The true revenge was surviving her. It was looking into the abyss she dug for me, building a bridge over it, and crossing to the other side, where the grass isn't greener, but it's real. I started the car. I turned up some loud music and drove away from my sister's shadow towards a future that, for the first time, was entirely, gloriously mine. And you, what would you do if the person who shares your blood was the architect of your downfall? Would you keep feeding the monster in the hope it would stop biting, or would you let it starve in the cage it built for itself? If this story about family toxicity and final liberation touched you, subscribe to the channel. Leave in the comments, is blood really thicker than water, or is that just something they say to keep us trapped? Remember, you are not obligated to love those who destroy you. You are stronger than you think.